Hey everyone, David Burduli here from Cyberleaks. In today's video, I'm going to talk about approval workflows in Business Central. This is functionality which is natively available in Business Central for your basic approval needs. So, if you have any approvals a little bit more complex, maybe they require multi-tier approval or with variable conditions, then please feel free to reach out at info@cyberleaks.com and we would be happy to work with you to find an approval workflow solution. Now let's go to have a look at workflow templates that are available. I'm going to search for workflows, but before I go to workflows, I want to have a look at templates that are available. Opening the list will show all available templates in Business Central. As you can see, they are categorized by different departments. For example, finance can have journal approvals. There is also purchase documents can have approvals like purchase invoices, orders, quotes. You have also sales documents which you can set up for approvals. So all these are just default templates that are available, and in order to start using it, first of all, I have to select desired approval. In this example, I will use purchase order and click new and new workflow from template. So this will get me into creating a workflow for purchase orders. In workflow I just created, we have events column on condition and response columns. The events are that triggers the response on the conditions that are set. So, for example, approval of purchase document is requested. So this is when user creates a purchase order and sends for approval. At that specific moment, this trigger will trigger this response, and if I click into the response, it is going to show me everything that will happen when the purchase document approval is sent. Firstly, it will add a record restriction, meaning that purchase order document is not going to be able to have status released or posted until this restriction is lifted. Then it will eventually set document status to pending approval. Here will be described what the approval structure will be look like, or who is the approval and how the requests are basically flowing for the purchase order. In order to describe this structure, we can choose approver type, where we have salesperson and purchaser type. We choose a specific user assigned to purchase order or sales order document, or we can choose type approver, which is basically the approver we set up later in approval user setup window. And we also can set up workflow user group, which is group of users that would be required to approve a particular document. In this case, I will leave approver, and then we have approver limit type with following options: approver chain that will go through the chain of approvals. Direct approval is a user who is going to be doing approvals and we set up it in approval user setup. Then we have first qualified approver. So if there is no end user setup, then document goes to anybody that is qualified to approve that specific document. And lastly, we have specific approver where we need to choose user ID, which is going to approving that particular document. In this case, I'm going to set back direct approval. So we can see a purchase order document goes for approval to my approver, which I will set up in approval user setup. So event is what triggers the response, and there is specific conditions that can be set up for the document to get involved into this particular approval workflow process. So the default fields here are document type, has to be order because we are in purchase order approval, and status of this purchase order needs to be open, meaning that user cannot send the purchase order for approval which is already released or already pending approval for approver. You can add additional conditions to the purchase header or purchase lines. For example, if we put some conditions on amount that we need only those purchase orders to be approved which has amount more than 20,000. So if user creates a purchase order which is below 20,000, that it won't require this approval workflow, and without any restrictions user can release the document. Let's clear amount and leave just those two standard conditions. Once the approval request is sent, these intended lines here are basically what happens next once somebody responds to that approval request. So, if the approval request is approved and the condition pending approval is zero, then it would go in response and remove restriction to this purchase order and change status to released. Also, when it sees the document is already approved, it will send notification notifying me that document is approved. Similarly, if the document is rejected, it will remove the restriction from the document and sets the status to open. The requester also has ability to cancel the document approval request. We can see the condition here where it is setting the status only for pending approval once. So if somebody sends the approval request but then decides to make a change, they would simply cancel approval request and it will reset status back to open and putting the message on the screen the request has been cancelled. And lastly, we have an option to delegate. So if someone wants to delegate on the approval request entry, it will then send it to the approver substitute. So once the workflow is set, you simply enable a workflow here. Now let's go to the approval setup. So here in the list, you have user IDs, which are the people who are going to be sending approval requests. You have approvers, who are the users, direct approvers. Requester users can have specific approval limits for their purchase or purchase, sales, or any other documents. I can assign my approver. In this case, we have Isabella. So if we check Isabella, she is the one who has unlimited sales approval, unlimited purchase, and any other request approval. If this user has any limitation on amounts for purchase orders, for example, we can put $30,000. This means now that any purchase documents that are sent for approval to Isabella and the document exceeds this amount, then she won't be able to approve it, and the document will go to substitute, which has unlimited approval amounts. Or if there is no any, then different workflow needs to be set up. In case the approver is not available to approve the request, then it can be delegated again to their substitute person. So in this case, I am sending the request to Isabella, but if she is not available, then the request will be delegated to John. Also, we have here users' emails as well, so used to notify them when the requests are sent for approval. And lastly, uh, one second, we have approval admin. There can only be one approval admin. If I select another person as approval admin, Business Central won't allow it. What the approval admin can do is that they can basically see all approval entries that are pending, and if there is any that are stuck or approver is not available, then approval admin can go and approve their request and release the purchase document. Here we can click approval user setup tests to get the quick test of what the flow should be looking like. We also can set up specific notifications. So in this case, if I open the notification setup, here I'm going to be getting notifications when approvals are sent out. Now, speaking of notifications, there is a setup which also needs to be completed in Business Central. So if we look at the SMTP mail setup, This is what needs to be configured in order to email out notifications from Business Central. I have applied Office 365 server settings. I enter the user and enter the password. Also, we can set up email accounts so that we can send the emails to the recipients with the specific documents. For example, you can set up general finance email and email out documents such as customer statements. Let's navigate to workflows. And you can see I have a purchase order approval workflow enabled. So now let's do a quick test and see what all this process looks like. I'm going to create a purchase order, click new, choose vendor, choose item and quantity. It doesn't really matter about amount because I have not put any limitation on it. If I try to release the document now, we can see the message that it can't be released before approval process is done first. I have to click request approval and send this document for approval. Once the document is sent to approver, Business Central shows the message. I can also take a look at approval entries, going under related order approvals. And because I was the one who sent this request, I'm able to see this in approval entries, which has status open, and my approver is Isabella. It also shows what when it was sent for approval, if there is any comments I added, or if my approver ID added. Now I'm going to switch over to my Business Central on the phone, where I'm logged in with Isabella's account. Here I'm looking for pending documents. Open the record. Here I'm gonna enter vendor invoice number. So if the invoice number is known for me, I will put it here and menu and approve. Let's wait. So it is approved. And once the purchase order is approved, I'm going back to Business Central to check the purchase order. And I refresh the screen. I can see the status has been changed to approved, and also the status of purchase order is released. This is all what I wanted to demonstrate about the workflows in Business Central. If you have any questions, feel free to send a message to our email info@cyberleaks.com. Thanks for watching.